We heard that there was a disturbance in the studio between artists. Can you confirm it all?
No information, sir.
Now, you might already know about Chris Brown and Frank Ocean's featherweight face-off that happened in 2013, but you might not know that the seeds of this beef were planted way back in 2011 by everyone's favourite walking paradox, Tyler, the Creator. Initially, when Tyler was getting a buzz back in 2011, Chris Brown decided to put out a little sneak diss on Twitter saying all of this demonic music is whack, essentially sprinkling a little dab of salt on Tyler the Creator's demonic, gothic, angsty style that was really popping off at the time. Chris went on to say, "What happened to people being happy? You punched those people, Chris. You punched them." But in response, Tyler hit back with some pretty strong roasts, saying why is Chris Brown so mad about Metallica, and suggesting that he looks like a box of pops. Meanwhile, Chris Brown decided to throw fellow Odd Future homie Frank Ocean into the mix by sarcastically comparing him to a young James Fauntleroy or Kevin Costner. Now, no points lost if you don't immediately know who these two people are. Both artists are mainly known for their work in the shadows writing for other artists, and we mustn't forget that this whole Twitter war took place in June 2011, which is an entire year before Frank Ocean would even sign his Def Jam deal that he would famously later go on to finesse for 20 M's. At this point in the game, Frank Ocean's high-profile work was limited to the indie release of his mixtape Nostalgia Ultra and his feature on the song She from Tyler the Creator's album. Frank Ocean was still a couple of months away from his high-profile features on Jay-Z and Kanye West's Watch the Throne album, but this wasn't yet public knowledge, so it was likely that Frank was probably feeling the burn from that tweet. However, despite not having the credits of Chris Brown, Frank Ocean certainly had the superior wit. Frank clapped back on Twitter and compared Chris Brown to fellow Bleacher arsehole and One Thong Wonder Cisco, as well as Ike Turner, aka Chris Brown Vintage. The beef between Chris Brown and Tyler raged on Twitter, and Tyler went on a Chris Brown roast fest, dropping some of the most savage burns I've ever seen Chris Brown ever subjected to. Some of the highlights include: Chris went to his barber and said, "Can I get fucked up with a taper?" Chris Brown is a stunt double for a highlighter. And then Tyler jumped in with the serious burn, "Hey Chris, Amber Rose stole your style." Honestly, every single beef from this tweet is complete fire. So Tyler the Creator, if you're watching and this music ting doesn't work out for you, you can always get a job in the writer's room at the Trap Law HQ. Though I must warn you that our writer's room is just a South London bando with a MacBook Pro and a DJ Khaled-sized case of chicken and mushroom pot noodles. We the best. We not really the best. But from there, some of the Twitter fingers and savage burns begun to reach a little bit beyond gentle roasting. At one point, Chris Brown said that he was on Fairfax the day before, and that Tyler's crew was super quiet and very easy to find. And Tyler the Creator leaned into the more serious side of the beef despite being a goofster and gaster, and said that he was there when Chris Brown was in San Diego with 3 bodyguards and Tyler was ready to pull up on him. Which is scary because we all know how real it gets when Tyler pulls up on you.
Jasper, nigga, I told your fat ass, don't do that shit. I told your fat ass self, you gonna hurt yourself. Cut that shit out, you too old.
Honestly, I like all of the jokes and beef, but when things start to get a bit more 6'7" and a bit less 6'9", things get a bit more scary than fun, and these stories can get out of hand. I mean, even for 2011, this thing escalated fast, and it looks like these guys were a couple of Snapchats away from lurking around the op block on the back of a moped with a Rambo knife. And really, that's almost what happened. A few days after this, a video surfaced that seemingly showed Frank Ocean being pursued by a couple of Chris Brown's cousins, and they were offering him the fade from the window of a moving car like some kind of mobile barbers.
Take the fade, though. Nigga, I don't know you either, nigga. Just take the fade, bro. Frank Ocean running. That's all you gotta do. Yo, Frank Ocean, what it do? Take the fade, nigga. Take the fade, what it do? For real, nigga, you a mark, bro. If you don't take the fade, you say something else, you a mark on West Over, nigga, you a mark. Nigga. Look, all over, you a mark if you don't take the fade, though. All over, nigga, what it do? He on the studio. Take the fade, come back. Fuck you acting like that, fuck, come on. You want it, nigga, come on. You want it? Come on! Come on!
For the record, YouTube moderators, no one actually got hurt in this video, and it is possible this was all for show. Now, after everyone got a little shook up, both sides made sure to pattern up the beef for everyone's sake. And who knows, maybe it had something to do with Chris Brown's boys pulling up on Tyler too.
Stop trying to get me, car! Stop trying to get me! Stop trying to get me!
But weirdly, a year later, it was noticed that Chris's side of this reconciliation was mysteriously deleted from Twitter. Interestingly, this was during the period where Frank Ocean had actually come out as bisexual. And apparently around this time, Chris Brown was asked about Frank Ocean's revelation by paparazzi outside of a nightclub, to which he left the simple response, "No homo." Yeah, that's kinda not okay, Chris. Now, there was actually no footage of Chris Brown saying this, and he denied the rumors in another tweet that was since deleted. It was in January 2013 that this beef jumped back into the skillet. Story goes, Frank Ocean pulled up to the Westlake recording studio as Chris was leaving, and duly informed Chris that he was parked in Frank Ocean's parking spot. Apparently Frank was blocking Chris from leaving and reportedly said, "This is my studio, this is my parking spot." Not sure it is, Frank. Chris Brown for a moment tried to defuse the situation by shaking Frank's hand, but Frank immediately refused. Fair enough, I mean, you don't know where that hand's been. So, offended by this, Chris metaphorically said, "This ain't your studio, but this is your beatdown," and proceeded to punch Frank Ocean in the face. Though for fairness and transparency, I do have to say, after this happened, conflicting reports did come out that it was actually people in Frank Ocean's crew that had taken the first swing on Chris Brown's crew. So we'll never truly know exactly who instigated this. And the closest we're probably going to get is an account by Sean Kingston, who says that he was at that studio when the fight went down and that it wasn't Chris Brown's fault, suggesting that either Frank or his crew of Crips instigated the fight.
He was reaching out trying to give Frank Ocean a dap. Frank Ocean didn't want to give him back a dap. And you know what I'm saying? Frank Ocean was talking shit like, oh, because I guess he had some Crip guys with him. He was like, "Ray," or whatever, and that's what happened.
Either way, at some point, Chris's goons jumped in, pushed Frank Ocean into the corner, and swung good. The entire scuffle involved 6 men in total, but it's unclear how many people from each side there were actually involved. A lot of shouting went on, and supposedly, Chris even said that he would bust on them too. One might assume that he meant shooting him, or at the very least, shooting a hot load into his cute little face. And according to the official incident report, at some point during the scuffle, it was alleged that Chris Brown had actually called Frank Ocean the F word, or as Dave Chappelle would call it, the gay N-word. Hate crime alert! Hate crime alert! And since this incident, many people have speculated that this is what Frank Ocean was actually referring to on his feature on Earl Sweatshirt's song, Sunday. So regardless of whoever started the brawl, it does sound like Chris's boys got the better of Frank Ocean. And in the official incident report, Frank Ocean was referred to as the victim, but purely because he was the only person that had stuck around and spoken to the police. Luckily, Frank's injuries weren't substantial. He refused medical assistance at the scene, but did later go to the hospital with a cut on his left temple and right index finger. I can assume that he was given Novocaine, 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 Novocaine for the pain, for the pain, for the pain, for the pain. He later confirmed the beatdown and finger injury on Twitter, in the first tweet saying that he wishes his Burmese mountain dog Everest was there. And I personally do too, because who wouldn't have loved to have seen Chris Brown mauled to death by a dog? That's not a joke, that's just true. Frank went on to say that he couldn't play with 2 hands at the Grammys because of his finger injury, but in the end he did manage to get enough finger strength to get through the performance. Though bizarrely, something must have gone wrong with his legs and he seemed to have had them digitally replaced during this performance, which has been widely removed from YouTube. It might have something to do with the fact that it was largely panned by audiences and Grammy producers who described it as faulty. I'd blame the finger. But regardless of the performance, the R&B Lieutenant Dan still had a good night. Despite his finger and legs having technical difficulties, he went on to win Best Contemporary R&B Album, beating out Chris Brown.
Frank Ocean!
Always good to see someone beating Chris Brown for once. And you could see that Chris Brown was visibly miffed, being the only person in the auditorium not standing up when Frank went to collect the award. Maybe his legs were having technical difficulties too. But let's not forget, on the flip side, injured-fingered Frank Ocean wasn't the only person who came out of that brawl with an injury. In the days that followed, Chris Brown was spotted wearing a cast on his arm, either injuries sustained from punching Frank Ocean, or just carpal tunnel from jacking it non-stop just thinking about the fight. Chris also kept it moving on social media immediately after the fight, Instagramming this picture and saying that he wasn't focused on the negativity. You know, the kind of negativity that you bring on yourself by not being able to manage your anger, breaching the terms of your bail, and ending up back in the slammer. But that's none of my business. Now initially, the LA County Sheriff's Department said that Frank Ocean was also looking to snitch good and desired prosecution in this case. But by the 5th of February, apparently he was calling peace and sanity and suggesting that he wouldn't press charges in a Tumblr post. I assume that he did that with a 5,000 word paragraph on a black and white picture of him smoking a Black Devil cigarette with half a nipple exposed. But what he really said on Tumblr was this. He said, "As a child, I thought if someone jumped me, it would result in me murdering or mutilating a man. But as a man, I'm not a killer. I'm an artist and a modern person. I'll choose sanity. No criminal charges, no civil lawsuit. Forgiveness, albeit difficult, is wisdom. Peace, albeit trite, is what I want in my short life. Peace." Apparently the Sheriff's Department was still looking to proceed with misdemeanor battery charges that amounted to unwanted touching. Sounds like Chris Brown to me. But in light of Frank Ocean's Tumblr forgiveness, this was no longer necessary and charges were never brought. That's frankly lucky for Chris Brown because he was 3 years into 5 years probation for the Rihanna incident, and this becoming a proper charge could have put him in the slammer for real. But despite the fact that Frank Ocean took the high road, Frank's cousin Shakir Duarte filed a lawsuit many months later suing Chris Brown for $3 million. Apparently that was $1 million for pain, suffering and inconvenience, $1 million for emotional distress, $1 million for pain and suffering, and an extra $60K for medical expenses. Damn, for a minute that makes American healthcare seem cheap. I get a bag of do. Chris Brown punched me in the face. Chris Brown of course retaliated to this suit, come on Chris, we'd expect no less, by filing a countersuit for $3 million, saying that the charges were absurd and Duarte had instigated the fight by punching, kicking, and threatening to kill Chris Brown. Now unfortunately I couldn't find any more information about where this went, so we can either assume that it was settled out of court or just thrown out completely. After all, a lot of time had passed at this point and still no one had ever filed formal criminal charges against Chris Brown. But who knows, maybe finessing runs in the family and Frank's cousin got a tidy bag from Chris Brown. So while this beef was never fully resolved, in September, Frank Ocean still continued trolling Chris Brown by wearing a t-shirt with Chris's name on it that says "Wanted for domestic violence." Now unfortunately, that t-shirt that Frank was wearing is no longer available. But why not show your disrespect by copping the merch of somebody that dislikes Chris Brown as much as he disrespects women? Me, because you can cop my new merch at traplaw.com. That is the end of the video. Hope you enjoyed that. If you did, make sure that you like and comment and subscribe down below. How about telling me what some of your favorite Chris Brown roasts by Tyler the Creator were in the comments? Or if you're too cool for that, hell, you can just head on down there and call me a big fat culture vulture. You know I secretly love it. I'm gonna just keep sipping my tea out of my lovely Info Laws mug that I've got right here, that you can cop in the merch store. Thanks again for watching, and thanks again to everybody that's been supporting me so far. It really means a lot to me to have your support and to have your continued viewership. Thank you so much for being here and for watching what I do. I really appreciate it, and I'm gonna keep cranking out these videos, aiming for 2 a week for as long as I possibly can, or at least until Diddy gets his hands on me. Thanks very much for watching, and until next time, as always, peace out.